So Andrew, you got interested in wine very young, and what, just like me, I got passionate about it very young. And what sort of started, what triggered your interest in it?
Well, my aunt and uncle, who were very close to me, my aunt was an actress, and she was the sort of glamorous part of the family for me, but she had quite a collection with her husband of Italian wine. So funnily enough, it was sort of through Barolos and things that I discovered wine far too young, when I was about sort of 9 or 10, I have to admit. And they had what was, for me, a sort of very glamorous place in, sort of off Harley Street somewhere. And they had quite a nice little cellar. So my first real knowledge of any kind of decent wine was via them and via Italian.
That's very interesting, because later on you became absolutely mad about and passionate about French wines. That was
well, yes, but my aunt let me have all her wine books. But of course, they were really basically about France. And because I love architecture and art are really my other great passion, other than music, obviously, but architecture particularly, it was a slight sort of, but not a very big but it was a hop and a skip, to Burgundy. Because, of course, Burgundy, from my point of view, is full of wonderful churches and wonderful buildings. And because I was lucky enough to get to Burgundy, and I fell in love with the wine at the same time. And that's really how I got into it. I was a collector of wine, really, by the time I was about 15.
Did you ever find, when you were playing around on the piano and starting to compose, did you ever find a glass of wine helped in the process?
Probably not then, but most definitely in more recent years.
Yes?
Definitely does. But I guess I was very lucky, Serena, because I hit the 1961 Claret vintage. So when I was sort of about 16, 17, I got a chance to taste quite a few then. I remember the first time distinctly when I tasted Chateau Parma 1961, and I must have been 16 then.
That's one of those landmarks. I mean, all of us have landmark vintages, landmark moments.
And I don't think I truthfully really knew about Chateau Parma. One obviously knew the famous names, but I didn't know that one. But I remember thinking, my goodness, if this is what it's like now, what is it going to be like in 2000? I don't know that I got as far as 2010, but it's still drinking beautifully. I just find this vintage very interesting, because the best of it is really good news.
Lovely floral nose, sort of.
Look, you see the colour it's very pale.
It is pale, which is a good sign, actually. Yeah. That's the wonderful thing about wine. It is almost like architecture or art. Even though you consume it, and you may not have that bottle anymore, the memory of it also stays with you. It's like a photo on the mind or on the senses.
It is extraordinary.
So do you think that there is a connection both with music and with art? I mean, certainly I've found that many, many wine lovers also really love art. I think that is a very big crossover. And
yes, it is.
It's been a crossover for you.
It's very, very much the case, isn't it? I mean, most of the wine collectors who I know also very, very interested in everything visual. Yes. I mean, so art in the widest sense. And I find a lot of people who are interested in architecture, really, they get the connection. But of course, I mean, I suppose for me, I'm a very visual animal, because obviously working in the theatre, I often think in terms of design. And so similarly, I think sometimes with wine, the context of it is very important. And I often think of certain wine in relationship to maybe the place I was at the time or the building I'd just been to at the time.
There's a big connection. I mean, you do associate it, the smell of it, the taste of it, with where you experienced it. Sometimes you remember the company that you were with, but it's mostly the context. That's where you remember.
I mean, I've still got down in the cellar 2 or 3 bottles from my school days.
That's unbelievable.
Which is,
I think I've drunk all mine from my school days.
No. I've still got 2 or 3.
That's sentimental value.
Well, I don't know. I mean, maybe we should try one.
Well, why not? Why not? Oh, these are great memories, Andrew.
Old cases.
Old cases.
These are old friends.
Exactly. Oh gosh, great 2005.
A little bit of the domain.
Oh,
Let's talk to it
let's
nicely, shall we?
stroke it.
Lovely, lovely boy.
One of the greatest wines
you
ever
lovely,
made.
lovely thing.
You can see tremendous differences depending on where wine's been kept, and very often wines that have been kept in British cellars taste fantastically young because they evolve very slowly in our particular conditions.
And I keep mine quite cold because I think it's quite. I mean, maybe I said keep it slightly too much on the cold side, but I just always feel that it's better to err on the side of caution there. I mean, this lot has been with me in more than one place because it was when I was at school. So
yes,
I
you
just
had to keep it in your study, and obviously you're doing a slight pruning of your wonderful cellar for this sale that we're having in Asia, in Hong Kong. And have you come across in your travels in Asia, have you seen what we are seeing, this great new love of wine out in particular in China and the whole Asian market?
Well, yes, and of course, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, with musical theatre, China has now become a very important place for us. It's becoming so more and more. Some of the theatres in China are absolutely superb now. In fact, I can think of 3 off the top of my head that, I mean, we would die to have in Europe. I mean, really, really first-rate musical houses. And so it's become a very, very important place for us. And I'm interested because the first, I mean, I think all of my main shows have been in China in some way or another. But the first one to go out in Mandarin will be Cats next year.
Thank you very much, Andrew, for telling us about your enormous love of wine, your enthusiasm for wine, which comes over so strongly. And maybe one day you'd actually write a musical about wine?
Well, you never know, do you? Never know. Thank you anyway, Serena.